Hi, welcome to Shark Chats. My name is Chris Guanche. I'm a digital media specialist at the College of Psychology. I'm joined today by Professor Shannon Karl, who is part of the College of Psychology's Department of Counseling and is teaching at our Orlando Regional Campus. Thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure. Thank you for allowing me to be here.
So you and 8 of your students recently did a presentation called Self-Care and Sanity During Stressful Times. So my first question is, was this inspired by the COVID pandemic, or was it being worked on before that and it just coincided?
That's a great question. It was inspired by the COVID pandemic. The team of students that I worked on with were moving through their internship and getting ready to graduate, and we were all dealing with the stressors of managing our lives, our jobs, our clinical work, caring for our clients during all this. And so we really wanted to put together some material where we could help anybody that may need a little bit of information, resources, and things about being gentle and really caretaking ourselves during this unprecedented time.
So can you kind of outline for me what the components are of self-care and what they all entail?
Sure, absolutely. One of the things that I like to talk about is kind of the 360 view of self-care. So self-care all the way around, mind, body, and spirit, looking at all aspects of kind of one's life and one's daily life, and looking at how are we nurturing ourselves and putting ourselves first. And that means our physical self, that means our emotional and mental health, that also means our spiritual health, and then our ability to make connections with others and care for others and receive that care in return across all our relationships. So it's really the whole view.
Mm-hmm. And can you give me some examples of what constitutes physical self-care?
Yeah, absolutely. So physical self-care runs the gamut from getting a good night's sleep. That's one of the things we talk about quite a bit in clinical mental health as far as meeting basic kind of activities of daily living, and that is making sure that we are sleeping well, that we're getting that minimum for adults 7.5 to 8 hours of sleep a night. The clinical term is called sleep hygiene. So getting a good night's sleep. Having good nutrition, taking care of your body with the food that you fuel it with, getting exercise, and that may be modified because of the pandemic. There are many of us, I think, that enjoy exercising at gyms or in groups, but there's still, I think, a lot of different opportunities to get outside in the evening, maybe after work when it's not so hot, and certainly in the state of Florida, but to be able to get outside, to get out in nature in the fresh air and to move the body is very healthy as well. One of the things that we do say is make sure that you are still in touch with your physician and you're on top of your medical care as well. That's part of physical self-care. Talk to your physician about how you're feeling. Talk about starting an exercise program and how that might benefit you. But it really does go from being able to make sure that we're getting good sleep, that we're getting good nutrition, and that we're getting some exercise in our life.
Mm-hmm. And the pandemic is not happening in a void where nothing else is going on. So lots of people have different challenges they're already facing on a day-to-day basis. And then you layer this on top of that, all of the anxiety, all of the uncertainty. So how do you approach tackling self-care in totality so it doesn't seem like something overwhelming or
Or another thing on the plate, so to speak. One of the main things that I can recommend is when you're looking at your schedule, and whether that be your work schedule, your school schedule, your family schedule, a combined schedule, schedule in self-care just like you would anything else. And so it becomes part of it, becomes integrated into your daily activity. And so when I was talking about physical health care, that can be pretty quickly routine. And so it just becomes part of day-to-day living that you're going to bed at a good time each night, getting up at the same time, incorporating a little bit of exercise and fresh air, and being able to be mindful of your nutrition as well. For mental health and for emotional self-care, it can also be really important to take quick breaks during the day. I call them take 5 for mental health breaks. So if you're in the middle of a stressful work day or a stressful family day or a study day, make sure that each hour you're taking about 5 minutes to get up, to move around, to clear your mind. One of the simplest techniques for relaxation of the mind and the body is what we call diaphragmatic breathing. Belly breathing is a good lay term for it. And essentially, it really is just take 1 or 2 minutes and try and still your mind and just focus on your breath. And it's as simple as this. You just inhale in deeply, try and fill your lungs up to the very bottom. Feel your stomach kind of expanding with the oxygen. And then you hold it for a second and then blow it out just like you're blowing bubbles through a wand. I guarantee if you do that 5 times, if you slow down and you just focus on that and do that 5 times, you'll feel more relaxed physically and mentally as well.
So what do you do in a situation if you feel no motivation at all to do anything, including self-care activities? How do you overcome that obstacle?
That's a common malady, I think, especially with the extra stress of the pandemic. And so one of the best ways to tackle that is to make what I call SMART goals. And that's very common as far as goal setting in clinical mental health. So goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time limited. It doesn't have to be this grand goal of incorporating awesome self-care into my life 360 every day of the week. It can be today, I'm going to make sure that I spend 2 times a day, spend 5 minutes each taking a time out and doing some breathing. It could be today, I'm going to go out for a walk or walk my dog or go out with a family member and go out for 10, 15 minutes. So it can be small things. And don't ever underestimate the power of getting things started a little bit at a time, and that snowballs before we know it. It's low pressure. We can't add, self-care shouldn't add additional pressure for ourselves. It should be something that's easy for us to integrate.
So basically incremental activities that in total just add up to a whole regime of self-care.
That's exactly right. A little bit at a time. And give yourself credit for all the little milestones, the little activities, the little progress that's made. Sometimes, oftentimes, especially now, everything that we have on our plate can be overwhelming. So say, okay, let me take a breath. And I know that I am smarter than I think. I'm stronger than I know. I can do this, and let me see what little bit can I do first, and then you celebrate that, and then go from there. It can help make it bite-sized.
And how do you approach the challenges of self-care in the pandemic when there's so many normal parts of life that we can't access right now? Like you can't go to the movies, you can't meet a friend at a restaurant for dinner, you can't go to a bar to have a drink, and that's stuff that a lot of people probably would consider self-care in normal times, and now that's all out the window.
Absolutely. I think that that's a real stressor and a real absence for a lot of us. And one of the things that I've been really impressed with as we've worked together and come together as a community here at NSU as well is our ability to be creative. And our ability to be creative in how we're meeting the needs of our students and our professional roles, but also our ability to stay connected in different creative ways. So I might suggest to take just a little bit of time and get as comfortable with technology. And this is likely more so for people that are in my age group, right, or older. I think our young people have kind of a natural intuitiveness, but don't be afraid of the technology. Get comfortable with video conference platforms. It can be from your phone, it can be from an iPad. It doesn't have to be formal. And check in face to face. You can have, you can have appetizers and a beverage of choice together on Friday night. You may not physically be in the same location, but you can still have that human connection. So I'd prioritize creative solutions like that for now.
I've definitely participated in a few Zoom happy hours.
Yeah, and it's helpful, right? It may not be fully the same, but it definitely does bolster that sense of connectiveness and support.
Hmm. And one thing that I definitely have always had a problem with as a former reporter is always having to be tuned into the news.
Mm.
Now we have this phenomenon called doom scrolling where people are just scrolling through social media and just reading endless amounts of news about how awful everything is in the world. So what's a way that you can maybe not shut that out completely, but try to limit your exposure to that?
Yeah.
What would you say about that?
That's exactly it, Chris. I would say time limited exposure. So it is important for us, I think, to be aware of what's going on and to have some type of access to news and science, but also to be able to make sure we're not inundated with it, that we're not, it's not overtaking our thoughts, it's not overtaking kind of our emotions. So being able to have limited time periods of access to news or watching news can be really helpful. I can tell you one trick that I personally do is I try and get my news from a couple of social media platforms, and that way I'll get just the headline. And then I can decide, I can make an informed decision if I want to kind of dig deeper and get that information. And so I may have had enough of information for the day, and so I can take a pass at that. But it gives me some control over how much is immediately in front of my visual field.
Hmm. Well, I have 6 distinct news apps on my phone alone, so I'm probably a special case in terms of being too connected to the news. So,
Yeah, if you weren't interviewing me, I would ask you a couple questions related to that. But you bring up a very good point about phone and having apps on the phone and how connected we are. And I'm the first person to also be guilty of this. Is my phone is always in reach. I'm always connected, right? We're always either getting news or checking email or messaging with individuals. And so it is important to also give yourself a break from technology. Every day if you can, and my best recommendation would be at the end of the day. Make it part of your bedtime routine that maybe your phone, whatever your technology of choices is on the charger, is away from you, so you can have some downtime and so you can have a separation, so you can rest your mind.
mhm. Now, pre-COVID, one thing I know people have done to take social media breaks is say they uninstall Facebook or whatever kind of app from their phone, and then they only check it by opening up the browser and then having to specifically log in. So rather than it just being instantly there to pop up, you have to deliberately go through all these steps if you really want to see what's on there.
You have to work for it a little bit.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I would recommend that as well for individuals that may reflexively, like muscle memory, right? Like pick it up and open up a particular app, and then before you know it, it's going into your brain. So it stops you from that, makes you think.
Mhm. So tell me, how important is it to maintain a self-care routine if you yourself are in the helping professions or you are a student who is studying to be in the helping professions?
Uh, I think that maintaining a solid self-care routine is critical for all of us in the helping professions, whether we be counselors in training, whether we be incoming students just starting the professional journey, whether we be, I'm a little bit over 20 years into my professional journey, and it is something that allows us to be our best self. It allows us to help others and still be able to take care of our families and our loved ones. It really gives us the foundation. And it goes back to the kind of analogy, you know, if you're on a plane and there's a situation, they always say, put your oxygen mask on first before you put it on any loved ones or traveling companions. It's the same thing. We've got to be able to take care of ourselves to be able to take care of our clients and others. And we need to be able to role model that as well, being authentic and being congruent is so important for clinical mental health counselors and individuals in the mental health professions that we really have to believe it and live it to fully bring it to our clients and have them be able to receive it in a healthy and productive way.
Mhm. We've been talking so far about self-care, but what if you feel that a family, friend, coworker is struggling? How do you encourage someone else to do this without, seeming like you're pushing something and being counterproductive in that respect?
So I always want to be respectful of where everybody's at and what might work for them, right? So what works for me for self-care is not necessarily going to work for you or anybody else. So we've got to be able to kind of individualize the goals and where self-care can fit into an individual's life with the least intrusion. And so I think if you take that approach, you take a gentle, kind of humble approach, like this is what I know has helped myself. Here's what the research shows that helps people in general. And what about this may resonate with you? What do you think might help you? So no push about it, just here's the presentation. And of course, if anybody is struggling more than typical, and I know typical is skewed a little bit because of the pandemic, there are many trained, licensed professionals that can help. We can provide resources and information here through the department. And then also there's counseling services available to our students, and there are resources throughout the community for counseling support. What I like to say is if our bodies get sick, we get healthcare. We seek physicians and we take care of that. If our minds get sick or our emotions get sick, why wouldn't we do the same thing?
Well, we all, of course, know the answer is societal mental health stigma.
Yes, and I'm hoping to continue kind of to advance the battle against that. There is no stigma in seeking counseling. Actually, it really shows strength because there's strength in having insight into yourself. There's strength in being able to be vulnerable and say, this is too much right now. And sometimes life is too much for many people at different points, and so it's actually the smart and strong thing to do to get a little bit of help to get you back up to where you were before.
And there is strength in recognizing that something isn't right and doing something about it versus just ignoring it and hoping it'll just go away on its own.
Absolutely, and the evidence is clear that self-care works, clinical mental health counseling and other types of counseling and psychological services do work if it's indicated, and that, you know, we can all support each other and come together in having those human connections, being able to have somebody to talk to, being able to trust others and relationships with others, and to be able to not just have to put your best face forward can be priceless with self-care and with support. Having people that you're intimate enough with emotionally that you can share not just the good, but the not so good as well.
And tell me a bit about creative mindfulness, what that is.
So creative mindfulness is really kind of looking outside the box as far as how we can integrate self-care in creative ways into our lives. That can include art and incorporating art. You know, Chris, we were talking about kind of Zoom happy hours or social hours. You know, that can be having Friday night art with a happy hour where everybody's kind of doing some painting or some drawing, some ceramics, colors, anything that we used to do as kids and we tend to grow out of into adulthood. I like to use in my class as an example of being able to connect with others, kids and older adults as well as Play-Doh. Let's get some Play-Doh out and see what we can make from that. So just anything that brings a little bit of respite from the day-to-day worry, anything that can spark a little joy. Also, gardening is something that also is a creative way to engage in self-care. There's research that shows that being out in nature and being among kind of plants and greenery is soothing and healing for us as well. So that can include gardening. It can include singing. If you love music and you love to sing, find some music that's meaningful for you and let it out. And so there's so many ways that we can be creative in our mindfulness. And really, it's just taking a break from our day-to-day responsibilities, whether that be work, home, school, whatnot, and being able to do something that's creative for us, that is rejuvenating for us.
Mm-hmm. And if someone wanted to create a formalized self-care routine as part of their daily life, what would you say are some of the steps for getting that started?
Mm-hmm. That's excellent. So there are a lot of websites that can help you with that, with templates. So if any kind of search engine, if you put in self-care plan, you should be able to quickly locate a no-cost kind of basic self-care plan where you would identify specific days with specific goals. Remember, I had talked about the SMART goals. They can be really incremental. It can be just a little bit at a time. And then that way, if you write it down, then you can track it and see what you're working towards and see what maybe you may be missing a little bit and want to put a little attention to.
And are there any good websites that you'd recommend to that effect?
Yeah, I think www.selfcare.com. Give that one a try. I also want to mention the importance of spiritual self-care as well. There are many of us have faith-based practices and faith-based communities, and there are many people that on a weekly basis, sometimes even multiple times weekly before COVID, would congregate together in person for a faith-based practice. We know that prayer and meditation is healing as well. That's excellent for self-care. It heals the mind and the body and the spirit. And so I definitely would encourage everybody to make connections through your spiritual or faith-based practices and to do a little bit of the connection that I had mentioned. If you aren't already connected with a faith-based community and you would like to be, that would be definitely something that could be helpful with self-care and that holistic mind, body, spirit picture as well.
And anything else you want to say on the subject of self-care before we wrap up?
Maybe just to reiterate, I don't want it to feel like an extra chore or an extra obligation for anybody. Do what's right for you and just kind of keep an eye on the big picture and just know in the long run, the more care that you give to yourself, the more you'll be able to care for others.
Well, that's a great note to close on. So thank you, Dr. Shannon Karl, for being part of this video today. And if you want more information about counseling programs, our various campuses, you can visit psychology.nova.edu. Thank you.
Thank you.